There are 4 verses in Genesis that modern theology has tried to conceal for thousands of years of history. They tell of a forbidden union between divine beings and human women that forever changed the fate of our species. Most people read the Bible without stopping to question the true identity of these mysterious beings. But the original texts in Hebrew reveal a reality much more unsettling than any known moral allegory. Who were the sons of God who left heaven to take human wives and father a cursed race? The answer could radically change our understanding of the true origin of evil in this world. For centuries, scholars have debated the identity of these beings and the catastrophic consequences of their transgression. What you are about to discover is not a legend, but a fragment of a story censored by time itself. To understand this enigma, we must travel to the dawn of humanity, when heaven and earth were connected. The biblical account begins when men started to multiply on the surface of the inhabited earth. It was then that the sons of God observed that the daughters of men were beautiful and utterly desirable. The original Hebrew phrase is Bnei Elohim, a term that denotes a direct and exclusive creation by the divinity. In the Old Testament, this designation is used almost exclusively to refer to angels or pure celestial beings. This immediately dismisses the modern theory that they were simply pious men from the lineage of Seth. The oldest interpretation suggests that we are facing an incursion of spiritual entities into the human physical world. The Book of Job uses exactly the same term to describe the angels before the divine throne of God. Therefore, the text suggests that beings from another dimension transgressed a fundamental cosmic law to become flesh. This transgression was not mere lust, but a calculated rebellion against the order established by the Supreme Creator. By taking human form, these beings renounced their state of grace to experience the forbidden pleasures of the material world. But the story becomes darker when we analyze the direct consequences of these completely unnatural unions. The product of this blend between the celestial and the human was not normal children, but a powerful hybrid race. Genesis calls them Nephilim, a word that has been incorrectly translated many times simply as giants or titans. However, the etymological root of Nephilim comes from the Hebrew verb naphal, which means to fall, or the fallen precisely. They were the fallen, those who descended with force to tyrannize ancient humanity with their terrible supernatural power. The ancient Jewish traditions, preserved in apocryphal texts, offer absolutely chilling details about these beings. The Book of Enoch, revered by the early church, expands this narrative with an almost surgical and terrifying precision. Enoch describes 200 angels known as the Watchers, who swore to fulfill this forbidden and cursed pact together. They descended upon the summit of Mount Hermon, a specific geographical location that still exists today on our maps. Their leader, Semyaza, feared that his subordinates did not have the necessary courage to finally carry out the forbidden act. But everyone joined the human women, teaching them secrets that humanity was not yet ready to know. They revealed to them the art of war, advanced metallurgy, dark sorcery, and the use of cosmetics for seduction. It was a total corruption of knowledge, delivering forbidden technology and magic to a civilization still in its infancy. The Watchers taught men how to forge swords and shields, transforming peaceful agriculture into military conquest. They revealed the secrets of the stars and celestial cycles, allowing the future to be predicted through forbidden astrology. They shared alchemical formulas to transform metals and create poisons that no human antidote could cure at that time. Women learned the art of beautifying the face with paints and ointments, to awaken uncontrolled passions in men. This accelerated knowledge without the necessary moral maturity turned the land into a perpetual and bloody battlefield. The appearance of the Nephilim marked the beginning of an era of violence and absolute chaos never before witnessed on Earth. These hybrid beings possessed immense strength and an insatiable appetite that ultimately consumed all available resources. They measured between 3 and 5 meters tall, based on the conservative traditions of ancient Jewish and Aramaic texts. Its bone structure was abnormally dense, allowing them to wield weapons that no normal human could even lift off the ground. The growth rate of these giants was supernatural, reaching full maturity in just a few years of life. His intelligence combined the celestial knowledge inherited from his parents with the predatory cunning of foreign human nature. They established dynasties of terror, dominating entire regions and demanding impossible tributes from the subjected human populations. When the food from the earth ran out, ancient texts claim that they began to devour humans themselves. The land was filled with blood and cries, causing divine justice to intervene in a drastic and final manner. This narrative explains why the Great Flood was not just a punishment for sin, but an absolutely necessary genetic purge. The human bloodline had been irreparably contaminated by the intrusion of this DNA foreign to our nature. The purpose of the flood was to restore the original human genome by eliminating all traces of hybridization with the fallen celestial. It was not an arbitrary punishment, but a surgical intervention to save what remained of pure humanity. Every creature that breathed outside the ark carried in its veins the genetic poison that had corrupted divine creation. The waters covered even the highest mountains, ensuring that no Nephilim could survive in secret, elevated shelters. Noah was chosen not only for his morality, but because he was perfect in his generations. That is, genetically pure. But the theory of fallen angels is not the only explanation that historians have considered throughout the centuries. During the Middle Ages, the Church tried to rationalize this myth to eliminate the uncomfortable idea of angels with physical bodies. The theory of lineages emerged, proposing that the sons of God were simply righteous descendants of Seth. According to this view, the daughters of men were the descendants of the cursed and violent lineage of Cain the murderer. St. Augustine was one of the main defenders of this stance, trying to eliminate the supernatural element from the narrative. They argued that angels, being pure spirits, do not have the biological capacity to reproduce with human women. However, this theological explanation deliberately ignores the specific linguistic use of the Hebrew term Bnei Elohim. If the text had wanted to say pious men, it would have used the term Bnei Adam, or sons of men precisely. The deliberate terminological distinction between sons of God and daughters of men cannot be ignored without violating the text. The fathers of the early church, such as Justin Martyr and Irenaeus, readily accepted the interpretation of fallen angels. It was only later, when Greek philosophy influenced theology, that this literal reading began to be considered unacceptable. Furthermore, it does not explain how the union of two normal human lineages could produce offspring of such powerful giants. Biology tells us that the union of believer and non-believer produces a normal child, not a 3-meter Superman. Therefore, the theory of the lineage of Set leaves too many loose ends and contradictions that the text cannot resolve. There is a third interpretation that connects this account with the ancient king lists of the millennia-old Sumerian civilization. In Mesopotamia, ancient kings claimed to be direct descendants of gods and ruled for impossibly long periods of time. The wise Sumerians, known as Apkallu, were described as semi-divine beings who brought civilization to primitive man. It is fascinating to note the similarities between the Watchers of the Book of Enoch and the Apkallu of Mesopotamian mythology. Both groups are described as masters who brought advanced knowledge and mingled with the existing human population. This suggests that the account of Genesis could be a theological controversy against the beliefs of neighboring pagan nations. While the Sumerians revered these hybrid beings as heroes, the Bible depicts them as monsters and execrable transgressors. The so-called heroes of antiquity, renowned men, were not role models but tyrants that needed to be destroyed. Archaeology has found figurines and texts throughout the region that demonstrate the obsession with divine hybridization. The concept of god-kings was the foundation of political authority in almost all ancient civilizations. From the pharaohs of Egypt to the emperors of Rome, all claimed to have a spark of divinity in their blood. But the account of Genesis dismantles this claim by showing that such a mixture is an abomination that leads to death. Returning to the text, the divine sentence against this corruption was to drastically limit man's life to 120 years. This reduction in human longevity marks the end of the mythical era and the beginning of known mortal history. There would no longer be beings that lived for almost a millennium, accumulating power and knowledge indefinitely on Earth. The mystery deepens when we read that the Nephilim also existed after the flood, according to the Book of Numbers. This has led researchers to wonder if genetic incursions occurred more than once in human history. Some Jewish texts suggest that Og, king of Bashan, was one of the last survivors of this cursed race of giants. The tribes of Canaan, especially the Anakim and Rephaim, were considered direct descendants of these powerful hybrid beings. This explains why the conquest of the Promised Land was not just a military battle, but a total spiritual war. Israel had to completely eliminate these contaminated lineages to purify the land from the presence of these corrupt genes. But beyond the military history, this story speaks to us about the constant human temptation to want to be like gods. The quest for immortality and absolute power is a recurring theme that connects Eden with the Tower of Babel. The children of God offered an evolutionary shortcut, a quick knowledge that promised to elevate man above his mortal condition. It is the same pattern we see in Greek mythology, with Prometheus who stole fire from the gods for mankind. Or, in the legend of the Titans, divine beings who rebelled against the Olympic order and were imprisoned in Tartarus. Interestingly, the Bible uses the term Tartarus in the New Testament to describe the prison of these rebellious fallen angels. The Apostle Peter mentions that God did not spare the angels who sinned, but cast them into chains of gloomy darkness. Judas, in his epistle, confirms that these angels abandoned their own dignity to pursue strange and forbidden flesh. These references in the New Testament validate the supernatural interpretation that Second Temple Judaism always upheld. For the early Christians, the existence of these hostile spiritual powers was a tangible and extremely dangerous reality. They believed that the spirits of the dead Nephilim, being hybrids, could go neither to heaven nor to hell after death. According to the tradition of Enoch, these incorporeal spirits became the demons that torment humanity today. They desperately seek physical bodies to possess, trying to regain the experience they lost in the catastrophic flood. This vision provides a coherent explanation of the origin of the demons that the Bible distinguishes from fallen angels. The cultural impact of this story resonates even today in our modern narratives about aliens and extraordinary superheroes. Many ancient astronaut theorists have attempted to reinterpret the sons of God as advanced extraterrestrial visitors. Come in the chariots of fire and in the beings that descend from the sky, a primitive description of advanced alien technology. However, this materialistic view ignores the deep spiritual and moral component that completely permeates the entire biblical text. The narrative is not about space biology, but about the transgression of the sacred limits imposed by the supreme divinity. It is a warning about what happens when the barriers separating the different planes of existence are broken. The figure of the gods turned into humans represents the utmost perversion of the natural order created at the very beginning. Instead of man rising to God through virtue, the divine descends to man through lust. It is a satanic inversion of the incarnation, where the spirit becomes flesh, not to save but to corrupt and dominate. When analyzing the Hebrew text, we find nuances that are completely lost in conventional translations into modern languages. The word for men in this passage is ha-Adam, referring to humanity in general, not just to the lineage of Cain. This reinforces the idea that the crisis was global and affected the entire biological structure of the human species as a whole. The pain of God, expressed in Genesis upon seeing evil, is the response to the destruction of his image in man. The forbidden mixture threatened to erase the imago Dei, the image of God, replacing it with the image of the cursed fallen. If the plan of the rebellious angels had succeeded, there would have been no pure human left to bring forth the Messiah. From this perspective, the account of Genesis 6 becomes the essential prologue for understanding the rest of the Bible. It is the explanation of why the ancient world was saturated with idolatry, black magic, and limitless superhuman violence. The gods of the nations that demanded blood sacrifices could be distorted echoes of these historical and real beings. Mythology would then not be pure invention, but the traumatic memory of humanity regarding these catastrophic and real events. Zeus, Odin, Marduk, and other father gods may have their origins in the memories of the powerful ancient Nephilim leaders. The stories of demigods like Hercules, Achilles, and Gilgamesh could be distorted memories of these real hybrids. The Epic of Gilgamesh describes a king who was more than 5 meters tall and possessed superhuman strength inherited from the gods. In Hindu epics, the Asuras are described as giants who rebelled against the Devas in devastating cosmic wars. The Greek Titans who fought against the Olympic gods share characteristics with the Nephilim from the biblical account. His stories of incest, parricide, and war reflect the chaos that Genesis describes with such sobriety and striking brevity. The Bible reveals these beings as cosmic criminals, removing their glory and showing them awaiting their final judgment. Declaring these so-called gods as mere prisoners awaiting eternal judgment is an act of theological resistance. In reading these texts today, we confront the discomfort of a world much stranger than we consciously admit. We prefer a safe and rational religion, but the Bible presents us with a universe inhabited by complex and hostile intelligences. The mystery of the sons of God compels us to reconsider our position in a cosmic hierarchy that we cannot see. It reminds us that human history is not a closed system, but an open stage to influences from other invisible worlds. The biblical narrative insists that the doors between the dimensions have not always been hermetically closed forever. And he warns that in the final days the conditions of the world will resemble the days of Noah before the great cataclysm. This prophecy suggests a return of the same dynamics of hybridization and corruption that provoked the ancient divine judgment. Today we see how science dangerously plays with genetics, crossing barriers between species in secret and public laboratories. The pursuit of transhumanism and biological enhancement echoes the ancient promises of the rebellious Watchers. Modern scientists openly discuss mixing human DNA with animal DNA to create chimeras for supposed medical purposes. CRISPR genetic editing allows for the modification of the human genome in ways that our grandparents considered impossible. Tech companies are investing billions in the pursuit of digital immortality and the fusion between brain and machine. The promise is the same as always. You will be like God, knowing and controlling the secrets of life and death. The desire to transcend natural biological limits is presented as progress when it could be the repetition of an ancient mistake. The desire to be more than human, to attain divinity through technology, is the same ancient and dangerous temptation. The story of Genesis 6 is not a literary fossil, but a dark mirror that reflects our own unchecked modern ambitions. It challenges us to ask whether we are repeating the same mistakes that led to the destruction of the first human civilization. The current fascination with contact with non-human intelligences could be a modern version of that ancient fatal mistake. Opening doors that we don't know how to close has always been the downfall of human curiosity without clear moral boundaries. The story ends with a warning echo that has resonated through the millennia to reach us today. The identity of the sons of God remains one of the most fascinating and debated enigmas in sacred literature. But whether we see them as angels, kings, or demons, their impact on the collective consciousness is undeniable and unsettling. They force us to look up and wonder what other secrets are hidden in the depths of completely forgotten time. The truth about our past is much more unsettling and extraordinary than any fiction we have ever invented. In the end, Genesis leaves us with the certainty that we are not alone, but not all company is benign or desired. The veil between the natural and the supernatural is thinner than our rational mind would comfortably like to accept. Understanding this chapter is to possess a master key to decipher the myths of all the ancestral cultures of the planet. It is the missing piece that connects history, religion, and legends into a single coherent and terrifying narrative. The gods who became humans left a mark that even the flood could not completely erase from the earth. His legacy persists in the megalithic ruins and in the stories of giants that populate the folklore of every known continent. Recognizing its historical existence is the first step to waking up from the comfortable dream of normality in which we live. Reality is much vaster, more dangerous, and more fascinating than what we have been told in official school history books. This hidden mystery behind the biblical narrative invites us to keep our eyes wide open to the unknown and inexplicable. There are more buried secrets waiting to be uncovered, truths that official history has preferred to ignore for entire centuries. Don't miss the upcoming videos that will reveal ancient mysteries and change your understanding of the world. The story they told you is just the surface of a reality much deeper and more terrifying than you can imagine.